M.A.K. Halliday. He is a British linguist and scholar, and he talks about systematic functional linguistics, where he says language is a system of choices, then creating meaning in the social context. And here he says it is like our own choice and our own materials, we have it in mind, so that it is like I should make an option, or I should choose myself whether to use, or whether to use this word in a particular context, so that I will give clear explanation to many people. And he says when you're talking about something, you should make your word of choices to when it that is what he talked about functional linguistics. The word should function, okay, the sentence should function to create an impact in the society. When it comes to grammar, he says he emphasized the importance of understanding grammar as a resource for creating meaning rather than just a set of rules. He says you should understand grammar. While understanding grammar, you will definitely have a meaning to the sentence. Just not a linguist, or grammar is not just a set of rules, but you should analyze and you should know. It is not that memorizing the set of rules, but you should know how to use and where to use the language and the word. Then discourse analysis, he says, Holliday's works on discourse analysis focused on understanding language in use, exploring how language construct social reality. Okay. Then moving to language and social semiotics, he explored the relationship between language and social context, highlighting language's role in shaping and reflecting social structure. Again, he has some many relations to deal with how society influenced language and society deal with the reality to the language, where he also made connections to synchronic and diachronic studies. Then these are the important linguists you should focus on. George Lakoff, he talked about cognitive linguistics. He focuses on the study of language in relation to the mind and the cognitive process, where we will also have a connection to the neurolinguistics. And George Lakoff also talked about neurolinguistics. And moving to Schumann's acculturation model, he was talking about the relationship between language learner and the target language community. For example, we take English. Many people will talk about English as a second language, English as a foreign languages, but we'll always have a target audience in the mind. When it comes to the acculturation model, he says when you have a relationship between the primary source, I mean the primary language, and the secondary languages, we'll always remember a target language to which we have to cooperate and which we have to create. So moving to B.F. Skinner, he developed the operant conditioning. Operant conditioning is a type of associative learning. It is like we associate one language with another. For example, if I speak Tamil, if some person is talking in English or any other languages, I'll try to understand the language in my mother tongue, so that my mind will automatically run. Maybe I can think that this person is talking this and this person is referring this. So those things B.F. Skinner talked about, the operant conditioning. Moving to Franz Boas, it is study of language as a cultural resource and cultural practices. This person also talked about the relationship between language and culture. Culture in the sense they talked about, it is like the way how a community is using the languages, how certain people are using the languages again. Okay. Charles F. Hockett proposed a set of 16 design features that characterize human languages, which he used as a framework to compare human language with animal communication system. I think we received one question in net when we talked about human languages with animal communication. Okay. So moving to research methods and materials in English. So first of all, I will deal with what is research. As everybody is a research scholar here, as everybody is a researcher now. So what is research is the systematic investigation into and the study of materials and sources in order to establish facts and reach a new conclusion. You will always find for a conclusion. We'll take a study, we'll analyze, discuss, we'll compare and contrast. Then at the end, we'll go ahead with the conclusion. Then research is a process of systematic inquiry that entails collection of data, documentation of critical information, and analysis and interpretation of the information in accordance with suitable methodologies set by specific professional fields and academic discipline. See, for example, science people will have their own set of rules and everything to make a process, to make a study. But as literature students, will definitely go for will have a thematic study, will have psychological things. Okay, those things will research is something. It is like a two-dimensional. Other person will go ahead with the results, and we will come to the conclusion as people of literature will have our own methodology in those things. Then research starts with a question or problem. Always research will start with a question and it will deal with the problem, and at the conclusion research will end. Whether will have a hypothesis, will go and make sense to the hypothesis, will justify the hypothesis. Research requires a clear articulation of a goal, and research follows a particular plan of procedure. Okay, this is what the research is. And research and literature follows a different design and methodology. For research product in this domain are largely interpretative. In literature, there is no empirical data to be collected. When it comes to literature, we'll not go and collect an empirical data like science people do or analyzed. Neither there is a hypothesis to be tested, but we'll deal with hypothesis and we'll make sure that we'll always have a hypothesis for one page, isn't it? Or for hypothesis for 4 or 5 lines, and we'll justify the hypothesis. While science is on subjectivity, literature encourages plurality of interpretation. We'll have so many interpretation, each anchored in the reader's horizon. It is up to we. It is how we take a novel, how we take a poem, or those things. Moving to the characteristics of research, we have like 3 characteristics. One is realistic, one is logical, and one is cyclical. When we talk about realistic, it must result to empirical data. Empirical data are those derived from actual observation of a phenomena. Okay, for example, people who are doing research on ELT, they will go and talk to people from the school and they will interview people, and interviews of people who have witnessed an accident and analysis of a first-hand document. These realistic research will always have the experience as the first-hand document and observation of artifacts and other actions that yield valid evidences of one's instigations. Those things will have a real investigation and the real thing and the real experience. That is what we have the the realistic characteristics of a research. Moving to the logical, it follows valid, definite principles, framework, and procedures. Moving to cyclical, it starts with a problem and ends with another. Okay, it is like a cycle. A research will start with a problem, will find a solution to the problem, and again at the end again we'll get another problem. Okay, as soon as a research answer question is answered, other questions may arise. That is what cyclical is. These new questions may refine the answers generated, fine tune the research method, or modify the answered research question. This process continues and until such time that a purified body of knowledge is attained. Until we get to a right conclusion, until we get to a right solution to a research, we'll always have this cyclical characteristic to the research. Moving to the critical, researchers should be careful and precise in processing ideas and judgment. Okay, for example, if we like choose like 6 novels, and if we want to make a post-colonial study, and when we write a research paper that is completely opposite to the genres in the study, definitely we should think of the critical items in the research. And moving to the replicable, the research procedure must be written clearly and chronologically for it to be replicable, so that other researchers can redo or repeat the investigation with intent of verifying the generated information. For example, it is not like we are making it a plagiarism thing, but if I am making it a sense, another person should also following the research, and he or she should be able to make the research further, and that is how the research should be. Then moving to the types of research, as you have already attended like paper 1 classes, I'll deal with some basic types of research. I mean, important research types of research. First one is the pure research. It is largely theoretical. In the context of language and linguistics, a study of English morphology or a study of consonant clusters in Tamil. For example, if you are doing a pure research, it will definitely will be on a contextual basis. Contextual basis, for example, you can have this title, a study of English morphology, that can be the title, or a study of consonant clusters in Tamil. These 2 titles can be a good example to show what is pure research. Okay, moving to the basic research, it is also called pure, fundamental, and academic research. Its purpose is exploratory and it aims to develop a theory, hypothesis, or discover facts unknown before. That is a basic research. Basic research does not aim at application or finding solution. Okay, for example, see, using one-act plays to teach spoken English to government school students in Calicut. For example, okay, those things you can have it in the basic research, and this research will have, this research is also called as a fundamental research or an academic research. Yes, ma'am. Okay, moving to the descriptive research. What is descriptive research? It refers to the methods that describe the characteristics of variables under study. It talks about the variables in the research. Okay, it is one of the basic types of research because one has to employ description in literature. People will always have a kind of description when we write. We will not have charts. Some ELT people will definitely do, but answers the question. This descriptive research will answer the question that begin with what, who, where, when, and how. All these types of linguistic and literary research will involve the description of the topics under study, and it involves many methods, especially case studies, naturalistic observation, and survey. The description we write on seeing all those evidences is called descriptive research. And moving to experimental research, in experimental research, as the word implies, the variables are manipulated by the researcher in controlled fashion to produce the desired effect. For example, if I am making this research, the experimental group is taught through communicative CLT, whereas the non-experimental group is taught to grammar translation method. See, one group I am making it a research on teaching them with the communicative language teaching, and one group I am making it on a grammar translation method. Those two methods or those two groups can be compared so that I can prove or disprove whether whether CLT will make success or the grammar translation will work. So that is called experimental research. I'm making some experiments there. So quantitative research and qualitative research. When it comes to quantitative, it involves collection, quantification, and analysis of numerical or statistical in numbers. We can say quantity. For example, if I say this, a statistical count of the use of blood in Shakespeare's play. If I say, if I'm making a research on this title, the word, how many times Shakespeare has used the word blood, that is, we can attribute it to quantitative research. And moving to qualitative research, see, it seeks an in-depth understanding rather than the surface description. Here I can make this study, a study of the use of myth in Girish Karnad's play. Here I'm not using the word how many times Girish Karnad has used the word myth in the play. So when it comes to quantitative research, I am doing that. But when it comes to qualitative, I am talking about the entire myths used by Girish Karnad. Then detective research, as the term implies detective research with a hypothesis or theory, data is collected to either support or refute it. You will usually have a hypothesis. In logic, detective suggests that movements is from the general to the particular. We'll always have, we'll take a general thing and we'll end it in the particular point. So that is called detective research. When it comes to inductive research, it is like vice versa. When we'll have a particular term and we'll end it in the general theme. That is called inductive research. Then, moving to exploratory research, it seeks to gather information about a subject or a topic about which no information is available or no many studies have been conducted. For example, you can, for example, what I can say, even I'll take my own experience when it comes to here. I'm doing a research on disability studies, but when I started the research, it was like I was searching for secondary sources and those things. There was not much many, but after some 2 years now, I think it is not, disability studies is not a new area of research. We have so many information and so many resources. So when it comes to exploratory, we'll gather information about a topic where there is no much available, but now my research has turned into explanatory research. It is carried out why something happens and predict future occurrences. It has already been done by many, and if I give a research, then I will tell what the other researcher, what the my co-researchers or the future researchers will do from my thesis. So that is what explanatory research is. While in exploratory and descriptive research, we address what and how, but when it comes to explanatory research, we'll have certain notions. We'll talk about what is interdisciplinary. So nowadays we'll get getting questions as what is interdisciplinary research, what is multidisciplinary. First, interdisciplinary research straddles two or more disciplines and addresses issue that usually beyond the scope of a single discipline or subject. For example, classical myth revisited in James Joyce novel can be one good example. And history. See, here I'm making references to histories in Girish Karnad's play. Here I will talk about history, and in connection with I will talk about Girish Karnad's play. That is interdisciplinary. I am taking two or more disciplines to address a problem to or address a particular novel or play. Here, the researcher should be prepared to do some in-depth analysis, and the researcher should be a healthy and equitable interaction. See, as we are students, I should not see Girish Karnat as a playwright, but you should also see Girish Karnat as a historian. Okay, that is interdisciplinary, mingling or straddling two or more disciplines. Then multidisciplinary. So here, complex issue call for a multidisciplinary approach that collaborate research involving many disciplines. Here, interdisciplinary, we have two disciplines, but when it comes to here multidisciplinary, we have so many insights. We have so many relation to anthropology, literature, philosophy, hermeneutics. Where hermeneutics is interpretation, study of interpretation, and demythologization. For example, you can have this examining the use of myths in James Joyce, Ulysses, and demythologization in James' work, so that you can get concepts from literature, anthropology, philosophy, hermeneutics, and demythologization itself. So, multidisciplinary, as the word implies, you'll get insights from so many disciplines. Then we have a term called research valorization. Research, whether it is theoretical or application oriented, should have in the final analysis some bearing on the society at large. And when we attend many Viva OC, people will ask what you are going to tell, how your research will help the future people, how your research will help the community, or mean how it is going to help the future generation, what is the message you want to tell to the society. So for example, good research impacts the society both socially and economically. For example, a research project in the field of ELT, such as teaching English to rural students in the Panchayat primary school, will definitely improve the lives of those disadvantaged people. Okay, that is called research valorization. Is then moving to research concepts and tools. Sorry, I'm making it so fast. I know. I think I can share the PPT with my teachers so that you can get it from them. So the time is constrained. I would complete other thing also. Moving to research concepts and tools. The research methods talks about methods such as quantitative and qualitative. Here, research methodology. What is the difference between research methods and methodology is where research methods talked about quantitative and qualitative method. Research methodology refers to the philosophical trust and orientation that underpins the choice of research method. For example, methodology would refer to the framework or the perspective, okay, by the researcher to critique. For example, if I take a novel, I can go ahead with the feminist approach or the postmodernist approach, post-colonial approach. I am using a certain theory. I am using a methodology there to examine the text. Okay. So when it comes to research methods, I can go ahead with, if I am doing any mathematical research, go ahead with the quantitative research or the qualitative research. That is up to the subject matters. Is moving to the hypothesis. We all know what a hypothesis is. Hypothesis is a proposition that is yet to be tested empirically. Whether the hypothesis can go wrong or, will not be satisfied, will not be in a good conclusion, or the hypothesis can satisfy and the research can proceed. The sources of a hypothesis are manifold. It could be a hunch or intuition or preliminary reading a limited data. The two characteristics of hypothesis are that it is basically tentative in nature. A hypothesis will always be tentative. Okay, those tentative titles we will discuss and will be tested, and at the conclusion we will say whether this work is making a sense to the post-colonial theory or this work is making sense to the feminist theory, and that is what a hypothesis is. A hypothesis could be proved or disproved, and it has to be underlined that even if a hypothesis is rejected on the basis of valid data and rigorous analysis, it is acceptable in research. We can end the research whether saying that my hypothesis has been proved or this hypothesis is not making anything to this uh, novel or play. Okay, we'll have so many types of hypothesis: simple hypothesis, complex hypothesis. In simple hypothesis, we'll have a single variable. Complex hypothesis, we'll have multiple variables. Then directional hypothesis, non-directional hypothesis. Directional hypothesis, we'll have some direction or some, see, for example, if we take a research, I know my thesis will end this. Okay, I will have a directional hypothesis. When we think of non-directional hypothesis, I really don't know how my thesis will end, whether I will conclude it in this manner or I will conclude it in other manner. The result will get to know only in the conclusion. Moving to the empirical hypothesis, a hypothesis is tested through observation and data collection. We'll collect the data for our research. Okay, when we are making a PhD research, the first thing we'll do is we'll go for the author, or we'll go for the books. Then we'll collect all those data. Okay, with all those collections, we call it as empirical hypothesis. And theoretical hypothesis is hypothesis that is grounded in theoretical framework and concepts. Theoretical framework and concept is we'll always try to relate the collected material to our research. That is called theoretical hypothesis. We'll somehow make connection to this material as these things to tell, and this critic has these things to tell, and so I am using those things in my research. That is what a theoretical hypothesis will do. Then null hypothesis is statement of no effect or no difference, which suggests that any observed differences are due to chance. So at the end, what the null hypothesis will do